Доброго дня, друзі!
Greetings. This briefing is dedicated to exposing fakes and propaganda of the aggressor state, 100 days of war and thousands of different lies that they present to their citizens and people all over the world. Today we will talk about the exposure of a fake when the aggressor state tried to accuse Ukraine of creating an environmental disaster in Severodonetsk. So it is about the refutation of the accusations made by Russia against the armed forces of Ukraine during the shutting of containers with nitric acid at the Azot plant. By the time of the strike, the territory of this enterprise was still under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine, which indicates the impossibility of shelling this enterprise by the armed forces of Ukraine. This would mean a blow to their own positions. On May the 31st, 2022, the enemy carried out assault operations in the western part of Severodonetsk with the support of their own artillery, and it was a result of these actions that a blow was dealt to the chemical enterprise. In addition, the provocation prepared in advance by Russia is evidenced by the official publication of Russian propagandists back in early May that they were informed about the recruitment of the armed forces of Ukraine to carry out a chemical attack by blowing up containers with chemicals in Severodonetsk. They made such a statement to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. They also reported in their propaganda media that Ukraine seemed to be planning such a strike. As a matter of fact, it was implemented by them as accusations against our state, which completely don't correspond to the truth, but a complete lie, like a niche of propaganda from the Russian state. Meanwhile, on the territory of the occupied Ukrainian cities, Russia is implementing its propaganda view. They not only use Soviet flags but restore Soviet monuments, in particular the monuments to Lenin. Why is all this being done? Firstly, in such an artificial way, they seem to be trying to show that they are implementing the policy of denazification, which they declared one of the goals of military aggression against Ukraine. The second reason is to remove Russia itself from this war and show that this is not a war in which Russia is participating. This is a war in which the goals of the long-vanished Soviet Union are being realized. The third reason is that by erecting monuments, in particular to Lenin, they are trying to show at least some changes that have occurred since the appearance of Russia. But these changes consist of destruction and murder. In order to show some kind of change, they put up monuments trying to play on the sentiments of the elderly in the occupied cities. Also, Russian propagandists continue to use children to change their own image after many weeks of destruction and killing of civilians on the territory of Ukraine. So it is about the already mentioned boy Alyosha from the Belgorod region who is meeting with flowers Russian tanks moving into the territory of Ukraine. In particular, graffiti was made in Nizhny Novgorod with this boy who is now trying to replace the old symbol of war. Previously, they used Ukrainian elderly woman for several weeks who met the invaders with a red flag. After the house of this woman was destroyed by the Russians themselves, she refused to participate in this propaganda work. But such rhetoric is not characteristic of all Russian media. In particular, Russian propagandists themselves are outraged that no one in Moscow supports the armed aggression that the Russian state is carrying out on Ukrainian territory. The Russian propagandist Kots writes that they say why the capital of Russia does not have actions in support of the war. No one voluntarily makes donations to the army and so on. Like, this once again indicates that the Russians themselves do not care about this war. Of course, they do not give a damn if they choose such leaders. But it is very symbolic that already there are fewer and fewer people who want to support this criminal activity of their leadership on the territory of Russia. And finally, about sanctions. The EU has imposed sanctions on both key Russian propagandists and Russian media, which washed the brains of citizens of Russia and other states, having their media resources in European information networks. Sanctions have been imposed on RTR channel, Russia 24, TV Center. These TV channels can no longer work on the territory of the European Union. During the 100 days of the war, we could see that Russian propaganda is one of the weapons used against Ukraine, and all the revelations of fakes prove that the truth is on the side of Ukraine and the lie is on the side of Russia. Therefore, I call both on the international community and Ukrainian citizens to trust only the Ukrainian media, the Ukrainian political leadership and the armed forces of Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.
Керівництву. До зустрічі!